Hi, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec Podcast, where I'll help you create teams worth leading, because life's too short to lead a mediocre team. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, Tech Executive Coach and Consultant, and our subject today is the coaching desert. This is a recurring theme. Whenever I talk to VPs of engineering, CTOs, a lot of them are surprised if they're first timers, and if they're not there, this is not their first rodeo, they might have gotten used to it, but still no one is happy about the fact that, guess what, your CEO in most startups is not likely to give you any meaningful coaching. Some say that they're lucky if the CEO even gives them good, decent feedback, like, you're making good progress. Here's what I want to see. Here's how I would say that you're being good and successful in your role. For many, even that is not a given. And unfortunately, this is the way things are. When I work directly with CEOs, I try to help them with that. But given that you are a subordinate of a CEO, the question is, what are you supposed to do? Do not just allow yourself to remain there and wait till, you die of thirst for feedback in that coaching desert. Yes, you might not be getting feedback easily, but that doesn't mean that you have nothing to do. But also, looking at the spectrum, there's giving up and just saying, okay, I'm going to die in this desert. And there's trying to bash your head against the way the CEO operates and trying to force their hand into giving you, whatever idea you have of coaching. And unfortunately, this extreme also is not very likely to succeed. You can ask for it. And I've seen instances where the CEO just didn't really understand that this is something that they can do or ought to do. And just getting that feedback to them solve the feedback coming in their other direction as well. So if you have a good rapport, I think that's perfectly fine to say, but do not be surprised if their answer is that they don't have the time or the skills, or even if they do say they'll do better, you'll see that after a week or two or a month, things are essentially the same. Now, the question is, what are you supposed to do? And what we want to focus on in this podcast is on the middle here, between giving up and trying to bash your head against the reality. And that's understanding that you have some control over what happens in this desert. What can you do? First, you can work on how you ask for feedback, because for many CEOs and leaders who are not technical in general, it is difficult to say what sort of feedback they actually expect. You might be lucky enough and get feedback about your non-technical skills, about how you communicate, etc. This is golden as it is, I think. But you can work on how you solicit this feedback. And depending on the situation, you might be better off going to the CEO with specific questions, for example. And this is something that I sometimes do with clients. If we decide that this month, for example, what we're focusing on is how they communicate or how reliable they are in the task they're given, whatever, something that they decide to focus on, they just go to the CEO and say, hey, this is my focus right now. I'd really appreciate if you could tell me how you view my situation as it is right now, if you notice anything regarding this in the upcoming weeks. And then they actually go and ask again after a month, for example, hey, remember what I told you back then? If you think about where I am right now, do you see any progress? What do you think? Is this good enough? Am I in the right direction or the wrong direction? That sort of stuff. This is actually you priming them for a specific set of feedback in a specific skill or area that you're focusing on. And for many, this is much easier. And also, I'll tell you a trade secret. When we tell other people that this is something that we're focusing on, sometimes that by itself will help us get better, because we are putting this in front of them and they will actually now be more primed to notice the progress that we're making. Because sometimes when you're making progress and people don't know that you're working on something, they don't even register it. It has to be like very dramatic for external people to notice it. But if we're talking about it, people are going to start noticing, oh yeah, I do notice that. He's coming to the meetings more prepared, or he actually speaks in a way that's a lot more coherent, or tries to use examples that are understood by me instead of just throwing jargon around. Because if you don't do it and people have gotten used to you blabbering about tech in meetings, they might have already, like shut themselves out whenever you start speaking. They won't even notice that you're making progress. So yes, this one trick would really help. Next, another thing that I really recommend is trying to realize how you can solicit feedback not just from the CEO. For example, how do you solicit feedback from your employees? How do you solicit feedback from your peers? These are things that are critical, because even if you were to get some coaching from your CEO, the CEO is not the only person you're working with, and they are not privy of everything that's going on. So maybe they could have helped you improve, but still they don't know everything about what's happening. And you would have to bring to the table like feedback and facts about what's happening all around you. So in this situation, I highly recommend that you try to create and establish a regular rapport, an ongoing relationship where regularly you speak with your peers, you speak with people reporting to you, and just as you provide them with feedback, I hope you provide your employees with feedback regularly, right? Just as you do that, you can try to solicit the same from them. How am I doing? Is there anything that you think is going better or worse? You can try to find the specific language that works better for you with your people, but still at the end of the day, this boils down to you asking people to tell you how you are doing, how they're viewing things, and whether the trend is a positive or negative one. That's as simple as that. Maybe you will come across someone that's amazing at giving feedback and will give you something that's a lot more structured and a lot more in-depth. Amazing, grab it with both hands and move forward. But if not, and this is unfortunately the common case, having this structure of telling people precisely what you're at can really help them notice it and start formulating thoughts in a way that's going to be useful for you. Especially if you're doing this not just with a single person, but across your team, but with all of your peers, you will then notice if things actually make sense. If there's a single person complaining about something, or if there are a bunch of them. If a few people are saying that you're improving, you're probably improving. That sort of stuff. So do that. And number 3 here is, of course, you can always try to work on yourself and decide how you are going to track your progress. Because when you don't get easy feedback from the outside, you can create it. I recently talked to a few CTOs who told me about things like surveys and employer NPS that they're doing inside the company to track their progress. That's perfectly fine. You can have something like, as we're talking, as I'm recording this, I'm working on finalizing a free CTO and VP of engineering assessment that I think you can run by yourself. It's based on what I do with my clients. And I think the tools like this can really help you keep track of your own progress and see, without enough feedback from the outside world, it's at least something that can help you ensure that you're making progress where you're aiming at and see that things are not stuck. So if you want to get that, do subscribe to my newsletter. The link is in the show notes, and you'll be able to get it for free once it goes out, which should be very soon. And all of this to say that you ought not allow yourself to just die there of slow thirst in the coaching desert. You can look around and understand where you're at so you can slowly move yourself. And maybe even if you don't find an amazing oasis of feedback, you can find something to sustain you and ensure that you can keep going and grow. That's it. As always, if you have any questions or comments, my email is in the show notes, and I'm always happy to hear from everyone, especially about this. And if you have any feedback for me, have at it. How about that for soliciting feedback? And I'm reminding you about the newsletter as well, which won't only have the link to the free assessment once it goes out, but also goes out every week with a link to this podcast, a free video, a free article, and a bunch of other goodies. So what are you going to lose? The link is in the show notes as well, and I'll see you here next week. Ciao.